Hey y'all, I'm James Wright and welcome to the shop. We are continuing the build on the desk, and this is going to be a fun one because we are getting really close to finishing and doing a lot of those little detail items that make the project extra special. So we're going to be turning this in from lumber into something that's starting to look pretty good. Let's dive in and take a look at it. Most of this video is going to be about details, and there are lots and lots of details on any project to get to the finish. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to connect my chamfering fences to my Veritas custom plane. I have a whole video showing how to make a chamfer plane like this. You can just create these fences that have a 45 degree on the bottom, and I don't use this most of the time when I need to make chamfers, but in this case I have a lot of chamfers to make. And I want them all to be the exact same. And this just makes it really nice. I can make them all the exact same. It's very quick. It's very easy. And so if you want to see that, there's a video on that. For most of the small things, I'm just going to grab a block plane. I'm going to ease the bottom of the foot. But for all of the other surfaces, they're all going to get this nice, heavy 45 degree chamfer on there. And this is the point where this big bulky shape starts to actually look a little bit nicer. Putting those chamfers on just gives it a little bit of a hominess. Still makes it big and strong and feels kind of beefy, but it just makes it a little bit lighter, and just I like the effect it gives it, that little bit. Now on all of the curved surfaces we have to use a spoke shave because it needs rounded around. So just covering the spoke shave does the exact same thing, and I get it close to the same size I'm going to get on the main pieces. Then we can pull out the card scraper and start smoothing this down. The card scraper will be the last thing to touch these before the finish, and I'm going through and removing any marks, any divots, any little bits and pieces that I want to get rid of. This is the last little detail I want to do before we can glue up these legs. Particularly on the inside and outside of the arches, it makes it very easy. If there's any epoxy that leaked out from the lamination, you can scrape it down and clean it out. Speaking of epoxy, we're going to glue together the legs. And I could use wood glue or something like that, but since I have so much epoxy sitting around for this, I figured let's go ahead and use the epoxy. And it is an incredibly strong glue, and especially if you have any gap or any bit that can't be clamped. And in this case, these joints really aren't going to be clamped together. The long grain surfaces aren't going to be pushed against each other. They're just going to sit against each other. And if you use regular wood glue, in that case, you need to have clamping pressure for regular PVA wood glue to work. You don't have to have clamping pressure for the epoxy to work as well. And the epoxy will then also fill gaps far better than the normal PVA wood glue. So in this case, where I'm not actually clamping the joint together, the epoxy is going to give it a stronger adhesion than I will get from a PVA glue. Does that mean you have to use epoxy? No. Actually, in this case, you probably don't even have to use glue. Gravity is going to hold the arch in place, and we're going to have pins going through the other, so glue isn't really necessary. But in this case, I really didn't want to be able to take it apart in the future, so we're going to glue it up. Speaking of the pins, I'm going to use a 3/8 walnut dowel, and I'm cutting it to be, about 3.5 inches. Actually, I think it was about 4 inches because I want it to be longer. And then I'm going to chamfer the end down a good bit because remember, we draw board these holes. So the holes are all offset. So when I drive this pin in, it will suck the joint together. I'm adding a little bit of epoxy onto the inside just to smooth it down, make it go in a little bit better, but it will then hold it in much better. So we're going to drive it in, and it goes down a little ways until it runs into the tenon, and then it has to bend over to get into place and hold it down. And then our legs are together. Now we need to move over onto the back structure. Now I wanted to put this into this video because here you can see I'm drilling through the leg vertical that I just glued together. And that's because I didn't mention this in the video last week. You need to drill the holes through the arches into the verticals and then through the back stretcher into the verticals. You're going to be putting pins through there, the steel pins that we looked at. And you need to do that before gluing up the legs. And so I wanted to make sure this was in here. And also there were a few other clips that were just, this is something I really like. So we're going to make round holes for the pins to go through the vertical and then into the stretcher. But the pins that I had made are steel. We had those forged by a local artisan, and I'm loving what he did with it. So you can just square out the round holes, chop them down, and then you can drive in the pin. And the nice thing about this is you can then take that pin out, just stick a clawed hammer underneath there and pull it out. And this is what holds the back together. So when I need to move in the future, the legs will all be glued up as one solid piece, but the stretcher going between the legs and the arch going between the legs will be held in place with a pin. And then I can just pull out that pin and pull the whole base apart, flat pack it, and ship it on. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to chamfer the tenon as it goes through the leg, because it's a through tenon and it will go through a 1/4 inch sticking out the outside. And yeah, sometimes you just run into problems where you don't have space. Well. Also, you know, these footages, this footage is a little bit different. This is actually recorded by me in the shop because, well, Luke can't come down now that other people aren't allowed to travel. So the footage will be a little bit different here. Sorry for that. So I'm going to drive it in. I'm going to mark where it sticks out past the mortise. And then I'm going to add another 1/4 inch onto that because I want this to stick out exactly 1/4 inch. And so I can get my my carcass saw and cut off that little 1/8 inch or so to bring it down to 1/4 inch sticking out the other side. Then once I know it is sticking out that 1/4 inch that I want, then we can chamfer it down because yes, I love chamfers. And I'm going to chamfer it at 45 degrees back to that line I just drew when we stuck it through. And this way, when I stick it back through the hole, the 1/4 inch that will be sticking out will actually have that chamfer on it. And it just makes it that much sharper. It makes it a little bit nicer. And I love the look of a chamfered tenon. Last thing we're going to do is file off all of the facets. This will just give a smooth surface on there that will feel good. Now for those dowels we had sticking through the legs that we put in earlier, I have this 1/4 inch piece of oak and I'm just using it as a thickness guide so I can cut off the pins at 1/4 inch out. So just like with those tenons cut out 1/4 inch longer, these pins are going to get cut out 1/4 inch longer. And then we're going to chamfer this, and we're going to square chamfer this. So I put a 45-degree chamfer on one side, and then I put it on the other side to match it, and I like the look of that square faceted surface on the end of a rounded peg. I'm using it bevel down and just shearing off little bit by little bit, and that's about all it takes. Really quick and easy. Now we're going to start working back on the slab. We have a lot of finishing work to do this. You may see I have big headphones on. We're actually doing a hangout with the patrons and members on YouTube, and so I do this once a week or so. My wireless headphones weren't working, so I had to use a 20-foot cord to hear what they were saying. So yeah, I have headphones on there. So I'm going to use a draw knife on here and scrape down the surface, and I'm trying to just get past this little bit of rotted underbark, cleaning up the surface and making it look good. I don't want to take it down to the absolute raw wood underneath. I want to show off the sapwood. I want to show off that coloring, but I want to keep the live edge natural. And so I'll take it down with the draw knife, and that will give me most of my surface. It'll give me my shape, but you'll see there's a lot of little nicks and bumps and things in there that the draw knife leaves. And so I'll come in with a spoke shave, and this will give me the chance to smooth the edge down. And this is the part where this edge, the live edge table, just comes to life. I love the feeling of this buttery smooth natural edge running along there. Now the only problem with that is we have a sharp edge on the top and a sharp edge on the bottom where the natural edge meets the sawn edge. And so I'm going to come back in with the spoke shave and I'm going to round over that edge. I'm going to put a decent round over on there, something around an 1/8 inch to a 1/4 inch round over on there, but enough so it feels good and you have a smooth transition from the natural edge to the flat edge. And so I'll start with it flat on one side and then slowly turn the spoke shave until it's flat with the adjoining side, and that will give me a nice rounded edge all the way along there. And I'll just keep going along it and feeling it as I go. It is very, very important how it feels. That is the key thing. Slide your hand along. If you feel any bumps or splinters or things like that, go back over it. These slabs are about 200 pounds a piece, so they're just within range of flipping and maneuvering by myself, and they go pretty well. Yes, I'm very, very happy with that. So now we need to attach the base to the top. And so with these legs, I'm going to drill a 1/2 inch hole into the top, and it's going down about 3/4 inch or so. I think I just randomly drilled it somewhere around 3/4 inch to 1 inch deep. Just keeping it square, putting in a little bit of glue into the hole, and then I'm going to drive in a 1/2 inch dowel. And so this is a little bit loose in there, but that's not a problem because this isn't anything structural. It's just a locating pin. Oops. That wasn't what I wanted. Yeah, well. So, hold on to things. Make sure you're watching where you're swinging things, especially when you have those. But thankfully, it's solid white oak, and it's really, really durable. The only dent was a little bit in one of the feet, and it actually worked out pretty well. Now, to put these together, laying them flat like this, pounding them isn't going to work very well, so I just use some clamps to squeeze them in together. And putting two clamps together makes it really easy to squeeze them together. We're wiggling everything into place, and then making sure those square pinholes line up so I'll have a good surface of it all coming through. And once this is in place, now we have those pins sticking out of the top of this base. We need to locate those pins into the tabletop itself, the desktop. So we're going to flip it over so that it's resting on those two pins. Now I'm only putting 2 pins into this. If I were to put 2 pins in either leg, then the expansion and contraction of the top may cause one of those pins to shear or future problems. So we're going to balance it all out and get it laying exactly where we want on the base. And then I'm going to mark where that pin intersects with the desktop. And the only thing holding this desktop down to the base will be gravity. It's 200 pounds, so it's more than enough. I'm only going to drill down about 3/4 inch or so, as far as I need, so that the pin will register all the way down in there. And then we can slide it into place and let those pins fall in. And that's all the connection that I need between the base and the top. Gravity will do the rest. I just need something to stop it from moving around on the base. So now that we have that in place, we can get this base off of here, and I can start doing some of the last minute repairs on this. We filled everything with epoxy already, but as with everything, once you plane it down a good bit, there's little holes and things that come through on it because we filled it with epoxy when it was rough. And I didn't show planing this side because it was exactly like planing the other side. It was just a lot of work. So we're going to be using the Total Boat, the Total Boat High Performance here. For some of the bigger ones, I'm going to use the thick set, but I like the High Performance. It has the right viscosity to fill these bug holes, and there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bug holes. And so I'm going to end up putting like 3 or 4 applications of this in as they all soak in, and I'll wait until it gets a little bit gel thickness and let that soak down in, and then put in another coat of it. And keep going at it until I fill in these bug holes all the way. It takes a while, and it's the vast majority of a day coming back every 45 minutes or so to fill holes. But once you do that, all these little bug holes just add so much character into the wood. I know a lot of people are going to ask me, how do you know there's no bugs in the wood still? Well, I got this from Matt Cremona up in Minnesota, and once you've slabbed the wood and left it outside in negative temperatures for months on end, it kills anything that's in them. And the only thing that would survive that is a bug that would live in a hive community, and those won't last if you take the slab away. So I have no problems with bugs in this, but if you're down south, you might have problems with bugs. That's something to think about. But I'm really loving how this is going and looking forward to finishing it up here soon. So yes, finally getting really excited. Hopefully next time we're going to be putting finish on these and taking them to their final spots. So I'm really looking forward to the next video on this. I'd love to hear your thoughts and ideas on this. Is this something you like? Is there something you'd like to see more on this? Is there something you think, wow, you really did it that way? Why didn't you do it this way? Let me know those in the comments below. I'd love to read that. So next time we're going to get together and we are going to do all of the smoothing and detailing, adding the finish, a couple other little items that just have to be done before it's all completed, and then we'll be taking it and putting it in place. So I am really, really getting excited for this. I do want to say a huge thank you to the patrons on Patreon. We've been doing several different hangouts recently with patrons and members, and it's been kind of cool just to hang out in the shop and see what you're working on, so you can see what I'm working on. We can kind of talk together. If you'd like to find out more about that, go to patreon.com, or on the main Wood by Wright channel, you can click the join button. And I've been trying to host a hangout once a week or so, especially during this time where we're all stuck in our shops. So come on over and let's have a little bit of fun. So say thank you to everyone scrolling over here on the side. They're really making Wood by Wright what it is today. So I think that'll do it for today. And until next time, have a wonderful day. Man, all these holes, it's really starting to bug me.